So, for everyone that doesn't know the story of Cloud Strife, I'm actually going to give the full story on what happened to Cloud from the beginning to the end. Okay, so let's get straight into it. So, the first thing, the first thing I'm basically going to start with is, so when it's Cloud and Tifa were children. Um, and such. Tifa was hanging around other people. Cloud was bullied as a child. Like the bullies that stuck around with Tifa, they bullied Cloud and whatever. Took the piss out of him and whatever. Tifa seemed interested in Cloud. Cloud actually was really interested in Tifa. He really, really wanted to be friends with Tifa. He would try to earn attention multiple times, but bullies would brush it off and whatever. So eventually, as time goes on and whatever, Tifa actually ends up with Cloud at a meeting spot because they want to talk, and because of everything that went on, because in the um, well, one detail I actually forgot to point out was the reason Cloud and Tifa actually spent time together when they made up is because um, Tifa actually collapsed and Cloud was actually there and such. But he did get into trouble, unfortunately. Okay, so time passes. They end up in that meeting spot afterwards, which is important, by the way, because they actually do end up talking and such. So they talk about their relationship towards each other as like friends and such and whatever. And Tifa actually tells Cloud that he'll save him. Save her. So because Cloud actually wants to join Soldier because he heard like a legend of Sephiroth, and he wants to be a soldier just like him, a hero. So he ends up actually joining Soldier. Years later to join it. Unfortunately, he goes under a test, but it doesn't work on him. Unfortunately, because he's not strong enough. He's not compatible with the energy, and such. So it just doesn't work on him. So he doesn't get into it. Unfortunately, so he ends up as like a normal recruitment soldier instead. Ones that just follow orders and do as they told and such instead of like Zack and such. So he basically and actually works and trains and whatever to be the best he can be until he actually meets Zack. So they do end up meeting in some sort of snow area. I forget what it's called now, but they end up meeting anyway. Forget the name of it. They do end up meeting, unfortunately. They have a good conversation. Zack tells Cloud he's from Gongaga. Cloud tells him he's from Nibelheim because that's his home, and they both make a joke. Yeah. So they apparently walk on and whatever, and the whole mission things go by and whatever. They become very, very close friends. They spend time together. Until eventually they end up meeting at Nibelheim in the end. So one point they do meet at Nibelheim. So Cloud is still doubting himself because of the whole soldier thing, but Zack's always there to cheer him up whenever he's down. So Cloud is actually happy because he has Zack with him. So they spend time together. more and whatever, get to know each other, whatever. Um, so so apparently, Cloud actually, they end up going. Basically, they all end up going to the inn and whatever, and look around, and then eventually they end up going to the reactor, area, where Sephiroth, ends up, learning about something. Unfortunately, he ends up learning about something, and then they actually go back, and whatever, and yeah. So because of that, and basically because they end up going back, they end up spending time the in and such, and Cloud and Zack get a bit closer, as best friends. Um, they bond and whatever, and then they eventually find out that the city is on. Basically, the whole thing is on fire. Um, so the whole thing is on fire because of Sephiroth. Sephiroth causes a massive problem. Also, Cloud's mom is dead. Unfortunately, Sephiroth actually killed his mother. Because if you didn't know in the OG, he actually killed his mother. So that would explain the whole thing. This is why Cloud is pissed or whatever. So when Zack finds Cloud, he's on the floor, unfortunately, wounded. So Zack runs to the reactor to try and deal with Sephiroth. But eventually let's just say he gets stabbed, unfortunately. Which leads to Cloud finding Tifa, unfortunately, which actually did run off because her father got killed by Sephiroth. So yeah, so apparently, Cloud actually ran inside the building, pissed. Well, he got further inside because Tifa was on the floor, because she was knocked down, and she actually really hated Soldier, unfortunately. So Cloud went straight in, pissed. He picked up Zack's sword, which originally is not actually Zack's sword. It's Angeal's sword. He basically goes in with it anyway. He apparently stabs Sephiroth in the back, and it actually hurts him. So Sephiroth is actually wounded because of that. He walks back out. He physically looks at Tifa and whatever. But then Sephiroth comes back and whatever. And the end, and then physically Cloud has to deal with him, unfortunately. And he ends up actually getting his way out of it and then chucking Sephiroth over the edge. So apparently that's how that one goes, unfortunately. So Cloud is still with Zack, unfortunately. They basically end up feigning because they hurt both of them. So the next thing is Hoju finds them. He puts them in a lab, unfortunately. So he experiments on both of them. So the two things is he considers both of them as a failure. If you haven't actually played Crisis Core, so he basically considers both of them as a failure. Zack is actually resistant to the Mako energy, meaning it doesn't actually affect him. But Cloud was heavily weakened by the Mako energy. So what basically days and days and days and days and days and days would go by. They're classed as missing to some people. Yeah, and also Aerith is actually worried too because they'd been gone for so long. So the next thing that happens is Zack wakes up, from basically after he's had this dream-like thing. He wakes up, he sees where he is, he breaks out of the glass, and whatever, and then sees Cloud in his weakened state. So he gets him out, and and they intend to leave the lab. So they actually go back to one of the places, unfortunately, to get Cloud some clothes, to try and change him into some clothes. So he looks after him and such as they go on their little journey and whatever, trying to avoid the Shinra troops because they're tracking them down. So Cloud can't even say anything because he's that weakened, unfortunately. So Zack actually keeps actually taking him along with him. So basically, the Turks are actually on their side at that point because of Zack, because they're close friends to Zack. So they just end up going and going and going until they actually hitch ride a truck. So they hitch ride a truck. They go get somewhere else, and whatever. They get off, and then they end up like near. Well, basically they were apparently going straightly for like Midgar. So the problems is that would happen is they were sort of nearly there, but well, so Shinra's troops actually surrounded them. Unfortunately, Zack tried to fight it off. Cloud was still too weakened, but Zack actually hit him anyway, so that the Shinra troops wouldn't find him. So Zack fought all these soldiers off, especially to make sure that he tried. But Zack was actually killed. Basically in the OG and the Crisis Core, basically, well, he actually was killed. So Cloud was left to pick up his sword. But Cloud actually ended up with trauma. He remembered basically Zack's words and whatever, but he actually forgot Zack out of his mind. So he ended up forgetting Zack. But he ended up thinking that he was, first soldier. Like he was the soldier that went to Nibelheim and whatever. And that was a legend and whatever. So he ends up in Midgar is like a mercenary and whatever, without knowing who he actually is. Now Cloud actually does have like metal poisoning from what he had from Crisis Core, from what he had. So apparently, as he becomes working for certain people, he ends up working for Avalanche in the end. For a job, they end up working together. He ends up actually also working with Tifa, which he actually has a real love relationship still. So he can actually still remember Tifa, but some of those memories are gone, unfortunately. But he still remembers her, unfortunately. Even some of his emotions are just not all there. So as it would go on, Cloud would just become more and more, weakened, in his mind, because Sephiroth would be messing with his mind directly, attempting him to kill, anyone that looked like him or any sort of vision that he'd see and whatever. Because he did this in the OG and he actually did this in the remake. He tried to kill certain things and whatever. So everyone would basically be questioning what's wrong with Cloud and whatever. Because in the remake, Fantasy 7 remake, he actually sees visions of Sephiroth. He sees him in front of him. One time he tried to strike down a man covered in a cloak, but basically, in his head, he saw it as Sephiroth, unfortunately. He actually saw it as him. So he did everything he basically possible. Once he seen what he was doing, he tried to snap out of it, which he actually did, because of his girlfriend. Because his whole team was there to back him out of it and whatever. He had support, and such, which is possible because as the story goes on, Cloud gets weaker and weaker and weaker. He has more problems with trying to, trying to actually be in control. So yeah, the story goes on. He ends up basically nearly killing more people, because of his problems and whatever. And he knows he's going through this, which is why, if you haven't actually seen the OG Final Fantasy VII, he actually nearly tries to kill Aerith, because of it. Because Sephiroth is actually controlling him, but when apparently Cloud actually comes to his senses, Sephiroth actually kills Aerith instead, unfortunately. So yeah, he actually ends up stopping the kill. So okay, so apparently that's about the story that goes on from like a certain point, but yeah. So apparently that bit comes after Cloud has actually went up to like the Shinra shit and whatever. Because what happens is he actually ends up fighting in Midgar, fights at the tower and whatever, and all sorts, and messing with bosses, especially sneaking into Shinra's headquarters and running up 99 floors of stairs. But in the remake, it's less. In the in the original, it's actually more. It's 99 floors. He has to run up all those stairs. There actually is a reference to do with that staircase. It's in Sonic Prime, one of the episodes, if you haven't seen that. There is a reference of a staircase, and that's actually where that comes from, unfortunately. So apparently, these actually somehow do get everyone together and whatever. Even though they end up captured at some point. They end up captured, they end up in cells, they end up escaping because Sephiroth kills some sort of, some sort of president or something. So they eventually get out and whatever. You basically know the whole thing. They actually get back to the Avalanche area. They actually climb this tower thing and whatever. They do their business and yada 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 yada. They actually do the dong. Say the dong person, and Cloud actually wears a dress. I'm not kidding. He actually wears a dress. In Midgar, unfortunately. He dresses up like a woman. Just to see the dawn or whatever. It's pretty funny. He also does it in the remake. Except he dances in the remake, which is pretty funny. He does it in a dress. So okay. Moving along. To the events of them leaving Midgar along with like Nanaki, which Nanaki actually is rescued. Unfortunately, so they end up leaving Midgar. They end up going somewhere else. Getting a couple of characters like Yuffie, which likes to steal, unfortunately. So encountering in a forest is also pretty funny because she would try to trick you, stealing materia, you kill, whatever. So this is partly back to the OG. Yeah, so apparently you would have to act in a way where you're not interested. Not interested in well, you get what I mean. Not interested in that sort of thing, really. So yeah. They end up going. Oh god. There's a lot of story. They end up going to see Sid. They actually recruit Sid. They actually end up also going to see Chocobo Bill, which has a Chocobo Ranch, and such, and it's all over the place in different directions. They also end up at one point finding the mega monsters and whatever, like Ruby and whatever. After going to the Golden Saucer, which is very like an amusement park, um, with all these rides and such, and you got the whole thing going on. A bit of it's actually middled. I think I'm getting actually sort of middled out now because it's all in different spots and it's sort of, I don't know, it's mixing me out a bit more now. Yeah, so apparently you basically, let's just say he goes through all this shit or whatever. He ends up getting the plane, ends up getting the gold chocobo in the end. He ends up racing and all that shit. He actually gets Vincent from Nibelheim. He wakes him up in a coffin, and such. And once they get the whole gang together and whatever, they actually end up trying to kill Hojo. At one point, they end up trying. So this whole thing just mainly going to try and kill Hojo. Vincent actually ends up seeing his girlfriend in some sort of crystallized state, which he gets his special limit move. So it's actually his girlfriend, which his girlfriend is the mother of Sephiroth. So so apparently his girlfriend cheated on him for Hojo because Hojo was a twat, because it wanted the child to go under the experiment sort of thing. So in a way, Sephiroth is actually also an ancient. Same as Aerith. They're both ancients because they're special. But apparently Hojo was a lunatic, an absolute lunatic. Um, so eventually they end up. So apparently they end up with this whole weaponized thing, whatever. So they end up having to try and stop this whole war, whatever, with these like monsters roaming around and whatever. They try to get rid of them and yada yada yada. This thing shows up from out of the sky, which is actually Sephiroth. Aerith actually does get killed in the back, like I mentioned before, because Sephiroth actually kills Aerith. Early on, some part in the game, she does get killed. So apparently everyone ends up finding basically finding out that there's a big crater and whatever, in the middle of nowhere, which has Sephiroth in it. So everyone actually prepares for battle and such. They end up going down to fight Sephiroth. They actually do. Sephiroth basically uses Supernova, which is a really strong move, which is supposed to obliterate everything. But everyone survives it because of teamwork. And they actually end up defeating Sephiroth. But not really, because Sephiroth comes back in Advent Children, unfortunately. So he actually comes back in Advent Children, but he split, unfortunately. And apparently, due to early on in Final Fantasy VII, Cloud ends up falling in like a live stream after the ancient temple collapses, because he ends up paralyzed at one point. So that leads. So the story goes on eventually of him actually end up getting out of the state and end up actually recovering because of Tifa. So apparently, years would go on because he'd end up in Advent Children. Cloud would have stigma on his arm because he's poisoned. So it's actually toxic because it would take host of other people that get around them, like a sick bug virus sort of thing. It would spread. It would spread to everybody that touches, whoever gets close. Cloud actually took care of a kid called Diesel or Dinzel, I forget his name. Also, they took care of Barrett's daughter, Malene. Well, not really his daughter, but it's his stepdaughter because, well, yeah, it's more of his stepdaughter because Barrett actually adopted Malene. So So yeah, they actually both have stigma. Unfortunately, both of them, Denzel and well, actually, Maline's fine. She doesn't actually end up with stigma. She's actually pretty fine. Yeah. So apparently, Cloud actually has it anyway. He actually has pain in his arm and whatever. He can't recover from it. Because he can't get rid of it and such. So he ends up fighting with the three reincarnations of Sephiroth. It's based on like personality. You've got the leader, I forget his name, which has short hair. You've got the other one, which also has short hair, but he's more of the person with a gadget knuckle thing on his hand. And then you've got the other one, which is the long-haired one, but not directly like Sephiroth yet. So eventually, Cloud ends up fighting them and such because they end up multiple times. He ends up fighting them. They end up winning a couple of times. They end up stealing the children, basically brainwashing them in their own toxic like because of the materia that they use. So that actually brainwashes the children to actually go along with them because they tell a lie that they can be cured. So Vincent's actually not happy about this. Neither is Cloud, unfortunately. So Cloud ends up actually having to fight whatever, but he doesn't win. So the trio of reincarnations of Sephiroth ends up in like a city. Unfortunately, they end up summoning Baramut, which doesn't really look like Baramut though. It looks like a different version of Baramut, um, which is pretty funny. So yeah, all these children are standing around this big circle thing, which and the parents are trying to snap them out of it, but no. Apparently everyone is fighting, even the Turks, which is pretty funny. They're all fighting against these like monsters that the trio actually summoned or whatever as well to go along with Bahamut. So they're all fighting and whatever. Cloud ends up getting there. They all end up focusing on Bahamut in the end. Especially Sid and Yuffie actually end up joining in their airship and such. Because yeah. So they all end up fighting and such. Against them and whatever. They do actually end up giving Cloud support to defeat Bahamut. They end up beating Bahamut because Cloud actually kills Bahamut because of friendship. Because one pushes the other and one pushes the other to push Cloud up, unfortunately. So the last one actually that pushes Cloud up is Aerith. Yeah, Aerith is dead, but she's able to help him heal just to get upwards because she's part of the live stream. So the next thing that happens is Cloud ends up following one of the others, unfortunately, somewhere else, ends up following all the three, whatever. Yeah, this ends up following all three of them. The trio of basically Sephiroth, unfortunately. Follows them until basically certain ones are end up dead until the last one is standing, unfortunately, which is the leader. So eventually what happens is in the end, he ends up basically catching up to the person and they end up fighting and whatever, and such. And because the box that the leader had like spilled liquid and whatever, eventually he ends up reincarnated as the actual Sephiroth. They end up as one. All three of those trio of Sephiroth, they end up as one actual Sephiroth. The actual OG. Its true form, unfortunately, true self. So they end up actually end up as that state, back to normal. So Cloud ends up having to fight Sephiroth, but he's struggling because he doesn't have the support on his back, like he used to, back in the past. So this time he actually has help from Zack, even though he's dead. So the support gives Cloud the strength to fight Sephiroth, and he actually does. He has all his swords, and he uses Omni Slash against Sephiroth, and it kills him. Unfortunately. So apparently, Cloud tells Sephiroth, basically be gone from my memory, and Sephiroth says, I will never be a memory. So when you think about it, Sephiroth is actually not dead. He's still alive. He can actually come back in multiple ways and such. So, okay, so moving on. So apparently Cloud ends up going to Aerith's shrine and such. Because he ends up falling into the church and whatever, ends up actually in the church. Apparently, fainted because he was actually brought to that church. So next thing that happens is children are standing around Cloud. Such they're all standing around him and whatever. So Cloud wakes up, notices that everyone's looking at him, especially his old friends and whatever. They're all looking at him and whatever, and then finds out that his arm is cured from Eric's live stream, because Eric actually made it rain. So next thing is Cloud actually ends up healing all the children because of the healing live stream water. It heals all the stigma of everybody. So everyone is totally cured for them, and they're all happy and such. And that's and there's actually more to do with Vincent. Vincent ends up on his own story sort of thing, where he actually fights somebody. I don't really know the whole thing because I only know his backstory or about his wife and whatever of Vincent being terrified of what he got turned into because of what Hojo did to him. But he can't really control himself in monster form. He tries, but in the game he can't. But it's like he has a mind of his own. But in other sorts, he actually does. He knows what he's doing mostly. So there's actually not really that much that goes out afterwards. With Cloud and such. Because the story is actually really interesting with Cloud. It's great. I like the story. Basically, it's actually my top favorite story of all time. With the whole of Cloud's story and whatever. Everyone around him, supporting him, helping him fight battles and such. Which is what Cloud is known for. He actually does have his memory. Unfortunately, he actually does get his memory at the end of the original Final Fantasy VII one. But yeah, but it's actually a good story. If you haven't actually played the OG Final Fantasy VII, I would recommend actually basically playing it. But I would recommend play Crisis Core first, then play the original Final Fantasy VII, and then watch the Advent Children movie, because that's good, and then actually play the remake of Final Fantasy VII, as well, the remake, and also play Dirge of Deep something. I forget its name exactly, but it's to do with Vincent. It's a shooter, and Vincent can actually change form. But yeah, there's multiple games to do with them, unfortunately. So they're actually really good characters. I like them. So now I'm going to explain what each character is. So Cloud is actually a failed soldier. Tifa is actually more of the really close friend to Cloud. and such. Barrett, on the other hand, is more of a new person to Cloud, and whatever. He's more of the leader of Avalanche, because he's actually the leader. Now Yuffie is actually a thief. If you apparently, she's apparently physically to do with Crisis Core. She's actually a ninja. She's actually trained to steal materia. And such. She's trained to do that, unfortunately. Now, Nanaki was actually from a home or whatever. His race is extinct, except for one of his kind. So in some sort of story, he actually does end up with another version looking like him, but it's in a different color, unfortunately. So they do end up having kids at the start of Advent Children. So Nanaki ends up as a father. Sid, on the other hand, if you don't know about Sid, he's a foul-mouthed swearer. He likes to swear a ton, and such. He's pretty funny. He doesn't do it in Advent Children, though, because I think Square Enix cut that off. It was pretty funny, though. But I think they probably would make him swear in the, in part 2 of the Final Fantasy VII remake. They'd probably make him swear, I reckon. Because he's funny when he swears. Okay, so a number of other characters is Kate Sith. Kate Sith is actually more of a spy for Shinra. So he does start out as a bad guy, but he actually turns out to be a good guy in the end, because a person is actually in the Shinra building, actually controlling the puppet to do stuff. So apparently that's another character. Aerith is actually the girlfriend of Zack from Crisis Core, which ends up getting close to Cloud eventually, which Tifa actually does get jealous. So there's that. So the other characters you've also got is Vincent. Vincent actually was experimented on and physically and whatever. He didn't like it and whatever, so he was pissed. So there's that one. And then you had yeah. Apparently Nanaki was basically supposed to breed with Aerith. I know, pretty weird. Animal with a human. Because of Hojo, but because Nanaki actually was kidnapped, to try and breed with Aerith. It is strange. But yeah. I actually don't think there's any more characters I can name. Oh wait, I forgot Barrett. Yeah, Barrett actually had a brother. Well, seemed to be like his brother. Something like that. They actually fought against Shinra and such, and they end up losing their arms, and they end up replacing them with guns. And Barrett ended up taking care of Marlene eventually. Which is why the other one actually had hatred for Barrett in the end, because of everything that went on. Because the other one lost his mind. So yeah, there's a lot of story around those characters and whatever, everything that goes on with them. In case you actually haven't played the game yet or whatever, they're actually pretty goddamn good. Especially the gold saucer. The gold sauce is good because you can ride chocobos and races. You can play on the arcade machines and such. You can also end up in a story position where you're actually in a play, which I'm thinking that might actually make its way to the remake at some point. So that'll be funny. But there's a lot of funny puzzles in the Final Fantasy VII thing. It's funny. There's a lot of things you can do and such. So apparently that's basically the full story of basically Cloud Strife. Basically there is my funny details about Cloud. In a flashback, um, this was funny. So it actually explained that he probably was dirty. Um, Now this is actually pretty funny. Now Aerith was actually seeing his flashback of Cloud. Cloud would look into a look in Tifa's drawer, and whatever, and look around the room, and he looks in the drawer and looks at a pair of knickers. I'm not kidding. That's actually in the OG game. He actually looks at a pair of knickers and whatever, and Tifa's just not happy about it because it's rude. There is stuff like that. Yeah, because clouds can be dirty in the OG. Especially like peeking through keyholes and seeing people like have the romance shit and whatever. It's pretty funny. Um, I think the remake might be kind of similar to that, where they might make it even funnier. Well, part two and such. We'll see. So yeah, I think basically that's all I've got to say for this video and such. So apparently what I have to say is don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment on the video. So yeah.